Hi, my name is Michael Chikeen. The smartest people I've met have one common belief, that us silly humans really don't know much. For example, we still don't know why planes stay in the air, or how Tylenol or even gravity works. Yeah, gravity. Look it up. In today's distracted, clickbait, misinformation age, I wish we could all be less certain, more humble, and a lot more curious. Admittedly, I've been known to struggle with all three. So no more, no less, this show is my attempt to be that change. Thanks for joining me, and here we go. Hey everyone, welcome back to No More, No Less. I'm Mike Chikeen, and today in the studio, I'm excited to have with me Victoria McCooey, because Victoria is a narcissist divorce coach, a motivational speaker, and the creation of the Reclaim Your Power system. Now, I'm hoping we get to some real reality show level dramatic stories today. Victoria works with those trapped in a toxic, abusive marriage to help them stand up to their abuser and regain control of their lives. Having been in an abusive marriage to a narcissist spouse herself, Victoria is passionate about helping others make the same remarkable transformation that she did. Through her writing, speaking, and coaching programs, as well as her social media following, Victoria has helped thousands acquire the skills, the mindset shifts, and courage necessary to stand up to an abusive partner and to create a joyful new life for themselves and their children. That all sounds very juicy. So let's dive in. Victoria McCooey, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
I guess where we could start is there are, I'm learning from you when you and I just chatted briefly that there are so many divorce coaches out there. Maybe you could tell us how being a narcissist divorce coach is different and how you help your clients differently than, say, a standard divorce coach.
Yeah, sure. Well, first, thank you so much for inviting me to be here. I'm really excited to talk to your listeners. There are so many divorce coaches, which is something new phenomenon because, when I got divorced, it was many years ago, but that didn't exist. But we have such a culture now of getting support from specific people who have had the experience before. So divorce coaching has become a very big industry. Wow. But what makes me different is that I deal specifically with people who don't think they can get a divorce. They feel that they are trapped in this toxic marriage because trying to leave, the repercussions are just too severe and they don't see any way out. So they are not seeking me for a divorce. They're seeking me for help setting boundaries and trying to figure out how to get through the day. And then as a result of their getting stronger and being more powerful and raising their self-esteem, they start seeing that divorce could actually be a reality for them.
Wow, that's a lot more involved than I thought it would be on their side. So when someone comes to you and they say they don't think that they can get a divorce, what does that exactly look like? Because I know there's obviously religious constraints around the stigma of getting divorced, but if, like at some point they could, logistically, they could just say to their partner, I want a divorce. Here's the papers, or I'm leaving. So what are the barriers between them doing that?
Because they've entered into this toxic relationship and it's such a codependent situation, the abuse escalates when the narcissistic partner becomes threatened with abandonment. So when they go to their, say, husband, it could be either way, but if it's the woman who's feeling trapped and she would say to the husband, I want a divorce, well, the repercussions from that are so severe. I mean, it could be physical abuse, it could be emotional abuse, it could be financial abuse, it could be using the children, hurting the children to get her to back down. There are lots of ways that he can try to stop her, from trying to leave.
Right. And for our listeners, you and I chatted briefly in email before we scheduled this because you keep saying like he would do this, he would do that, and I asked like, well, do you only work with women, or do you only think that women or men are capable of being narcissists? And you're like, no, of course. there's a lot of women that are narcissists, but you predominantly work with
Yes.
women, but, are seeing men as well.
Look, I get a lot of pushback when I use the statistic, but this is a statistic that 75% of narcissists are men. So there are more women married to narcissists than vice versa. But absolutely, they exist. And I've worked with many men who are the abused partner, who the repercussions for them are emotional abuse, withholding affection, hurting the children, or threatening to take the children. Just so many things that they think it's just not worth it, and I can get through it. I can just figure out a way to get through life like this so that all these terrible repercussions don't happen. And then they end up in this really empty life where they're walking on eggshells constantly. They have no voice, they have no say. Men, just not being able to make any decision, to do anything without approval. So yes, it absolutely goes both ways. Because I had my own experience as the wife, most people who see me on social media or wherever, most of the women who are attracted to my coaching tend to be women. But it doesn't mean that I don't also work with men.
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting, because as we were emailing, and it's interesting you brought up that 75% of narcissists are men, because I was looking up statistics myself, and it said something like, I think 7% of the male population are narcissists, and then something like 3.5 or 4% of women are narcissists. So I think the percentage is a little bit different, and I was thinking why that might be, and I want, from the people that you've met, and I wonder if it's because, just like anger or sadness will present differently in men to women, I wonder if even how a narcissist would act in a relationship would be different from a man, because it would come more from an angry place, because men are traditionally, this is a whole another topic, but even how they're raised, there's normally a narrower bandwidth of emotions, right? There's anger and things like that, and so it's going to present with controlling and anger. Whereas if a woman's a narcissist, it might be something more passive aggressive, maybe more lying or emotional manipulation. And I've seen a lot of that in relationship with friends. Like even an example from when I was 19 or 20 in university, I broke up with a girl because she was presenting all sorts of really, to not get into it, odd-mannered situations after we'd been dating for 6-7 months. And when I split up with her, her decision how to respond to that was to fake having cancer.
Wow.
Right? And so to the point that she had even found letterhead and from a local hospital and pretended that a doctor wrote it that she had, because I was figuring things out, but it was a huge mindfuck for me, because you think that this person's lying, and they're convincing you with letterhead from a hospital that they actually do have cancer. So then I felt like a monster, and then it took years until she and I had a conversation, and she finally admitted to all these things. So I don't know if that's a psychopath or a narcissist. I don't know what it is.
It's something.
It's something for sure. And so I guess maybe for listeners out there, because there's even a friend of ours that we have that he seems to maybe dealing or dating one of these narcissists or B cluster personality sort of people. But when you're in it, I can tell personally, you don't really know what's going on, especially if there's a lot of like lies and deceit and withholding.
Right.
It's a bit of a reality distortion field. So how do you identify a narcissist?
So I'm so glad you said that, because just yesterday I was having a conversation with one of my clients, and she was saying how nobody understands, because they're like, why would you let this happen? Why would you? It doesn't happen in a day. It's not like one day this starts happening. It's like a slow drip that carves into stone, right? It happens slowly over time. And at first it's so minor, you think, I would look like an idiot if I made a big deal about this. I would be
Right.
overreacting if I made a big deal. And then it just slowly, like in my own case, mine was a lot of it started with financial abuse. I had 3 babies in 3.5 years. And I was a freelance writer. So I stopped working pretty much completely during that 4-year period. And if I didn't work, I didn't get paid. And so my then husband was paying for everything. I might take a project in between babies, but it wasn't enough to make a dent, right? So that was just our agreement that, I was having babies, he was carrying the bills. And if I got some money, some little bit of money, I just gave it to him because he was here's something toward the bills.
Right.
Then slowly, as I started going back to work, it was hard to get my control of my money back because I had just been handing it over. And then there were stories that he'd tell me about how, well, no, I need to have control because, we're in a tight spot and only one person can control this because I'm moving money from here to here and I'm playing it so close and it's too much to explain. And it just made sense. Like, okay, well, here, keep doing it. And father of my children supported us throughout this whole episode. And
Right.
it all made perfect sense. And then it started with, I need you to sign for this loan because my credit's bad and yours is good. And then, of course, well, that's what we need me to do for the family. I'll do that. And then the next line of credit. And when I started pushing back going, I can't repay this. Like, I don't understand how I shouldn't be signing this. Then the abuse would start. Like, how dare I question that he knows best, that I don't understand, that I'm too stupid to understand money and business and how his business
Right.
made so much more money that I had to just accept that this was what was best. And the more I would push back, the more the worse the abuse would become. So where's the line?
Gaslighting 101, like gaslighting 101. Like I've even spoken to, friends over the years, and the way they describe some emotional manipulation with their wives or girlfriends over the years is kind of like they felt completely unheard. And any time that they wanted to voice their opinion, no matter how small the grievance was, like, oh, can we maybe do this with the home or whatever, like real basic stuff, she would just, erupt with like all sorts of like either crying and so it was completely. I'd tell like listen, I don't know your situation, so maybe it's different, but it does sound like emotional manipulation, and over time that becomes emotional abuse. Like, so I would normally counsel, like, you should probably speak to somebody that deals with these, with someone like this, so you can get, professional advice. And I think you said it perfectly. Like, if someone says, well, how do you let this happen, or how do you not, like, you come into a relationship with nothing but hope. Like, you come in with exuberance and love and good faith and good intention, and you don't think the person that you love, especially if you've entered a marriage and you have children, that they're going to be perpetrating this sort of gaslighting scheme. So it takes a while to come out from under these love-colored glasses to realize, like, oh, my life is I'm emotionally falling apart
Right,
here.
right. So when you fast forward in our situation, how the control of the money just got worse and worse and worse over the years, and now I'm back to normal. I have a big job. I'm a freelance writer. I'm making a lot of money, and all of it is being controlled by him. I don't have access to any of the money I earn. I have to practically beg for money. And so people look at that snapshot and go, I don't understand. You're educated. You're intelligent. You make a lot of money. Like, how are you in this spot where you can't have your own money? And it's like, it didn't happen in a day. It didn't happen overnight.
Right.
This is a cumulative effect of years and years and years of taking away the control.
Right. So how do you? So when someone comes to you that they're in this scenario, like, have you developed over the years ways to spot, like, no, you are in a relationship with a narcissist?
So
sorry, go ahead.
I'm not a psychiatrist, and even psychiatrists have a difficult time pinpointing, that diagnosing someone as a narcissist. There's a lot of gray area. It's their 9 criteria, and if they meet 5 of the 9, something. But it's very subjective, right? So it doesn't matter if someone is diagnosable as a narcissist. What matters is their tendencies, their behavior is so far on the spectrum that it's toxic to you. So that is dependent on you and where your tolerance level is. What makes it toxic to you? Some people might be able to handle more than others. I have another client who for her first husband, but his second marriage, but regardless, he moved into her house. She was older, established, and he made new rules where she wasn't allowed to sit on the furniture, her own furniture. What? Not allowed to watch a TV, like all these crazy things, because he's like has an issue, and like he wanted everything to be pristine and nobody could touch anything, and so she's having to eat on like a TV tray because she's not allowed to sit at the time. Neither is he. I mean, not
he
sure.
should just have taken like the Italian grandmother perspective.
With the plastic.
You put plastic on everything. You can eat whatever you want. You're good.
But you say to her, it's yours, but the repercussions are so severe that you just go, it's not worth it. I'll just eat on the frickin' TV tray.
Right. Well, you brought up something really important about how it's not diagnosable, because even, for example, so they have psychiatrists, psychologists have this big DSM book with all the mental issues and diagnoses, etc. But it's like a living, breathing document that changes over time. Like, for example, homosexuality was diagnosable in the DSM as a mental illness, and even as close as the 70s, right?
Wow.
So there's only so much validity we can give to like an exact diagnosis, whereas some people might have elements of borderline personality disorder, narcissist personality disorder, or even psychopathy, right? Like, there's something we discussed on the pre-chat here that I've only learned recently is a dark empath, someone that can understand emotions, but they can't fully feel them and actually relate to you. So it's all performative.
Right. So that's what I see all the time. They understand what they're supposed to be feeling, what other people feel. They understand it, but they don't feel it. So they can act as if they're feeling.
That's like
empathy.
Me watching most sports games. I understand that these people care so much. I just don't feel it.
Right.
And so from when someone comes to you, what and you've diagnosed their situation as very toxic, very emotionally damaging, what is the next step to eventually try to coach them into a position that they can take action?
So my goal is to get them to a place where they can make the decisions about how to proceed in their marriage, excuse me, from a place of strength instead of from a place of fear, right? So they may want to leave, they may not want to leave, but I want to get them to a place where that decision is being made from strength. Like, it is best for me. I choose to do this because this is what I think is best for me, my children, whatever. Or I choose to leave because I think that is what's best for me and my children, not because they're afraid to leave.
Okay.
So 9 times out of 10, they decide to leave. But I'm not, people are always like telling me, oh, you're pro-divorce. It's like, I'm not I'm pro-person. Like, I'm not pro-divorce. I don't think everybody needs to get a divorce. But I want you to be able to decide that without fear of it.
Right.
So that's my goal, is to empower. My program's called Reclaim Your Power. So much power has been taken away from these victims, right? Emotional power, psychological power, financial power, whatever. They're stripped. And they're very compromised. So my goal is to build up their self-esteem. We do work, inner work, mindset shifting, trying to rebuild their self-esteem, raise their confidence and their self-worth so that they see the dynamic differently. they feel more powerful in the relationship. They feel that they can make boundaries and hold on to them and aren't afraid of the repercussions anymore. It's about shifting the way they see the abuser as a very damaged, compromised person, right? They're not capable of doing any better. So instead of being afraid of them, of the narcissistic spouse, I want them to almost feel sorry for them, but not to the point of trying to fix them, because there is no drug and there is no therapy that fixes narcissism.
You're right. You can only save yourself, because what I've been learning, because ever since I found you on that directory for guests, I've been looking into this, and it seems like if you are in one of these toxic relationships in which the person who is your spouse or partner that should have ideally an emotional investment with your experience of them and of the relationship, etc., that you should be building this, this life together. If every time you bring up a concern or you have a feeling about something and they invalidate it either through emotional manipulation or stonewalling, contempt, like all of these things, then you eventually begin to internalize that your opinion doesn't matter, your emotions don't matter, and then you slowly begin to disconnect from yourself. That's which right. Leads to all sorts of things. So women, I'm not really sure what that would, lead to. With men, I've read it leads more to gambling, substance abuse, maybe cheating. I'm sure cheating would be on both sides. But I think I would say, since women in today's age have a larger emotional range, I think they probably are more likely to reach out for help to either their friends or to a coach to be like, I'm drowning here. Can somebody save me? Whereas in the men, I'd imagine they'd end up going down with the ship or finding someone else and another victim.
You'd be surprised. A lot of even women also won't reach out for help because they're embarrassed, they're ashamed, they're humiliated. Yeah, that the person who's supposed to love them, who the outside world thinks is, because they put on a show that they adore you, that you're the perfect couple, is actually being so abusive toward them. It's embarrassing for them. So, yeah. That's why a coach is kind of like a safe place for them.
Yeah, I think it's great what you're doing for these people. You mentioned something that stuck with me, how people say that you're pro-divorce, and I just stopped myself from laughing out loud because it's such a silly thing to say. I think everyone should be pro-divorce for those who want to get divorced. It's there is a lot of this. It's a religious foundation for people to say that once you're married, and if your marriage is failing or you're miserable, it's because you're not working harder. You need to, and then it creates this really awful cycle that it's going to be more self-flagellation, you're going to either give more abuse or take more abuse. It's such a nightmare. So I think everyone, if they can be happily married forever, I think that's amazing. Everyone should be, and I think that's the goal. But it's very obvious in the world that that's just not reality. And if you realize your spouse has changed or you've made a mistake and you need to leave, I think divorce should be held up as yes, go get this thing and take another chapter for your next step in life.
Right. And so because most of the people who are attracted to my programs are women, they have this fear of no one else will ever love me. I'm unlovable. I'm too old. All the things women have about their self-worth as they age. So that's another factor of, I can't leave because I'll be alone for the rest of my life. And
right. Super sad.
Yeah, it's super sad. But no one has ever said to me after the divorce and they've moved on, I wish I hadn't left. No one has ever said that. No, it's just fear of the unknown, right?
Yeah. Well, especially if you married early as well, and it's everything you've known, and especially if there's a financial component to it. Like I even know someone that was in they were happy in their marriage, but it wasn't, it was a amicable marriage, but it was something that she just wanted to leave, but because he was making more than her and she was going to school, she felt financially she couldn't even leave. Like there's just so many reasons and variables in marriages that, you know, the worst case scenario are probably the people that you end up encountering. So I guess so let's say not to identify a narcissist, but how would you help someone identify that they're in a situation that isn't great and that they should leave? Like how what does that look like?
My job is pretty much to hold a mirror up, you know, because it's become their normal. They live in a bizarro world. They live in a world where what the narcissist does, or narcissistic, I should say, because we don't know if they're narcissists or not, but they have these tendencies or traits. They check a lot of the boxes. It's become their reality. Just like this woman who won't sit at her own dining room table, right? It's like, it makes no sense to us, but it's just the way they've accepted their life has to be to get through it. So my job is to help them identify what's real and what's not. To hold a mirror up and go, does this look like a normal situation to you? Or help them weed through and go, not take everything the narcissistic person says at face value and go, okay, is that true? Is that real? What they're saying, is that real? Or is that a manipulation to get me to believe something? So it's like they're in the weeds and we're trying to clear a path for them, saying what's real and what's not here. So it's really, the most difficult part is at the very beginning. And the most fulfilling thing for me is when the switch goes off, like it's like a light switch. You know, suddenly they'll go, oh, everything's a lie. Everything's a lie.
That is a difficult moment.
It's really exciting though, because they see it. And it's heartbreaking, but it's exciting because now there's hope for them. Now there's hope. Now they want to get to the other side.
Those love-colored glasses or empathetic colored glasses are completely off.
Right.
Like, and I went through something like that not so long ago, where the second that I was able to realize that the person I thought this person was a complete fabrication, a total fraud, I could see so many other instances over the years that, like, oh shit, none of this was real. And then you're living your life, and then you're even, like, something pops in your mind, and you're like, oh my gosh, that was also a fabrication. That was another misdirect or whatnot. And so it's maybe because, like, we all live in our little siloed homes, you know, and all these things happen without anyone knowing because of all the shame. Like you said, someone can't sit at their dining room table. They're cut off from their finances. There's, you know, I have friends, like I said, that they feel like they're never listened to, and they have no control over any part of their family life. It's all under the wife's control. Mm-hmm. And so maybe you could share some more stories with us. And because, you know, before I just wanted, because it would be super
entertaining.
Yeah, super entertaining. But now, even from the few stories you shared, I think people just need to hear that, like, there are people going through these scenarios, and they're not uncommon. Like they're happening all the time through many different relationships. And maybe we need a disclaimer that, like, yeah, even good relationships will go through periods where, you know, both people are stressed and shitty, and they come out and they end up having better relationships. But, like, there are really toxic relationships that you can identify and you can leave.
So some of these stories that I'm telling you, these are things that normal people wouldn't do, and it doesn't ever get better, right? When you see that somebody is capable of doing something, like I'm thinking of one story I'm about to tell you, it's not going to get better ever. Yeah. Just like if there's physical abuse, that it's never going to get better, right? Once you allow that, it's like, okay, well, that's allowed now, so it escalates. So here's the story. Oh my gosh, it's so weird. Yes. This woman couldn't find her favorite, I don't know what it was, her favorite pair of pants, whatever. And she's turning the house upside down. She asks her husband, and he's like, how do you lose a pair of pants? Like, what, where were you? What were you doing? Like, almost accusing her, right? Can't find them, never found them. And then weeks later, her favorite top goes missing. And she's like, what? And it's not like it went to the dry cleaner. So she tells him again, he's like, what's wrong with you? Where are you taking your clothes off? Like, what's going on? Like, how do you lose clothes? And then the third thing goes missing, and she doesn't tell him because it looks like she's crazy.
Right.
She can't find it, and this keeps happening. So like 5 or 6 of her things go missing, and she can't find them, and she doesn't say anything. And months go by, and it's like no more things go missing, but months go by, they never talk about it. And she just like wrote it off to some weird thing. And one day she's in the attic looking for something, and she sees a bag that she doesn't recognize, like tucked behind a box. There are all of her things. He was taking her stuff.
The worst when people are crazy and stupid. Like, get rid of the bag. Like, that guy would make a terrible criminal. But
right?
It seems like all of this is about control.
Well, this was retaliation. So she confronts him. Says, what in the world? Why would you do that? He goes, well, remember when you lost that pair of pants of mine? My favorite, whatever, hoodie, whatever, that had gone to the cleaners and didn't come back and it had gotten lost. And he blamed it. He goes, well, now you know how it felt. So he was justified, he thought.
Right. Well, I'm sure in the minds of many of these people, there's a justification out of pure fear at the bottom of it, and unworthiness, and all of these things that hopefully a team of psychologists can work on with some of these people. But yeah, because that's insane. That's completely insane. Like, even on the top level, that it was because the dry cleaner lost it, and for some reason that was her fault.
Yeah. Well, he can't be blamed. Like, somebody has to be blamed. They
right.
can't take any accountability or responsibility, but they have to blame somebody else for anything that happens to them because they're the victim, right? They have to blame somebody else for everything that goes wrong. It's like living in a torture chamber, right? You don't know what's coming next. That's how my life got at the very end. Back when I was in my relationship, I went to a lawyer. For me to get to a lawyer was like moving mountains, just because he couldn't find out. There would have been hell to pay. I had no control over money, so I had to borrow the money to pay the lawyer because I couldn't have access to my own money. I didn't have access to a car because my car had been repossessed, not because we didn't have the money, but he just chose not to pay that bill. So, I mean, it was just like a torture chamber. Like, you never knew what was going to happen. And I had no control. I couldn't pay for it because I couldn't get to my money. So anyway, I go to a lawyer. I tell him what's going on. I go, how do I separate financially? This guy is just like, he's controlling all of my money, ruining my credit, making really bad decisions financially. The debt we're in is unbelievable. How do I separate financially? He's like, you can't. You're married. His debt is your debt. Like, you can't separate. And he goes, and you can't get divorced because you don't have grounds. I go,
Hold on, what?
It was a long time ago.
Oh,
and New York was not yet a no-fault state. So I had to prove grounds in order. I was trapped. I said, how do I not have grounds? I rattle off the emotional, the psychological, verbal abuse, the name-calling, cursing in front of my children, saying horrible things. Nope, he hasn't hurt you, so you don't have grounds.
That makes me insanely angry, because the whole fact that, like, you willfully enter into this agreement as of a marriage, and that you need grounds to get out of it. That's crazy. That's like checking into a hotel, but you actually need like a plane ticket to be able to check out. Like, a marriage is not supposed to be Hotel California. Like, you should be able to leave whenever you want to leave.
Well, this was the year 2000.
Come on.
And
I thought you were going to say like 1981 or like.
Well, thanks. You think I'm.
No, that's why, because I couldn't imagine like in the early aughts that I know whatever legal system in North America wouldn't let you exit a marriage just because you wanted to.
New York was one of the last states. It was very much a patriarchy. You can't leave a marriage. So, I was just, devastated. Like, this is my life. I can't. The lawyer said, but don't worry. Sooner or later, he'll hurt you. Then come back and see me.
What?
Yes.
He said that with a straight face?
Yes. Like, then you can get a divorce when that happens. Like, oh my God. So now I'm just like, what do I do? I have to live like this. So I was determined to get control of my money back. It was a long story, but it was because he had let our health insurance lapse. I didn't know it. And so I found out we weren't covered. We had 3 kids. Like, that was not okay. So that was my why. Like, I am going to get control of my money because we are going to have health insurance. And I was not going to stop at anything. So, I was just mama bear, and nothing scares me anymore. You don't scare me anymore. So the less scared I got of him, the worse the abuse had to get, because, we're doing this dance. Like, I'm not scared of you anymore. Okay, well, I'm going to get scarier then. And so it was literally like living in a torture chamber. I never knew what was going to happen. Like, throw all my clothes out of my room, stomped on my cell phone, didn't give me work messages. Like, it was horror show. Take the kids and not tell me, and keep them all overnight, somewhere else, and I wouldn't know where they were. Like, just torture.
So let's say you were to meet yourself as a client, and you wouldn't know the exact extent of the person's home experience, but you know that it's toxic enough that they need to leave. How would you instruct yourself to even converse with someone who's that abusive and, I would say, borderline insane? Like, how do you broach the topic to eventually be able to leave? Let's forget that there's children involved, because I know that complicates it much further.
You don't talk to them. Any engagement is an opportunity for them to abuse you. So you have to completely separate emotionally, and it takes a lot of work. It's hard, especially when you're living in the house together, especially when you're co-parenting children, and you don't want to make the children's lives weird and miserable, right? You want to pretend like everything's okay so that they don't have to suffer any more than they have to. But any engagement, and you can't have a discussion. There is no such thing as a discussion with somebody like that. It escalates immediately into a knockdown, drag-out argument where it becomes word salad. You know what that phrase means, word salad, where they're throwing in all these things, something that happened 5 years ago, something that and you're trying to understand how that's progressing their argument, but it's not. It's just keeping it going. It's just like more stuff, but you never get from point A to point B. So you go crazy trying to make the connection until finally you go, okay, this is nonsense. I'm walking away. And they go, see, I won. You agree I'm right because you quit. And you're like, okay, whatever. It makes you insane living with a person like this.
Yes.
So you have to not engage in, I call it the Stepford wife for my women clients, Stepford wife syndrome. Like, you have to become like, you're just pleasant. You just like are empty inside. You don't let any of the abuse in. You pretend like you don't even understand that it's abuse. You're like, it doesn't even affect you, but you're getting all your ducks in a row and you're preparing to leave.
Right. So one day you could just, they're gone for a work trip for 2 days. You can pack up all the things you need and go to someone's house or a shelter.
It depends on what the details of the family are, but yeah, or they serve them, or God forbid, I get them prepared. So if there is physical violence, which I'm telling you, almost always escalates to that, because when they're not getting the supply they want from you, from the verbal abuse and from the emotional abuse, when you shut down and it's not giving them what they want, the abuse has to escalate, and a lot of times it escalates into hitting, pushing, shoving, something, and I prepare them so that when that happens, they call the police.
Right. Yeah. Well, and if possible, it sounds like the best case scenario is that, like you said, you can serve them, or you can leave and move out as much of your stuff as you can and get to another place that you can make better decisions from.
Right.
Hopefully a family member's place or someone that you can trust to not egg you to interact with that person any longer.
Right. But when they're kids, it becomes more complicated, because you can't, if they're there, you can't take the kids, because then that's kidnapping.
Right. Wow, that does make things a lot more complicated, having kids.
Yeah.
Because I imagine when the process would start of separation or divorce, then it gives the abuser in the relationship the ability to use the children as leverage in one way or
pawns, yes,
or another, right? Which is worse for everybody, but especially the kids.
Yes, it's a whole other topic, the parental alienation piece that they perpetrate.
Right.
So that's another episode. Anyway, people always say, what would you do differently? It's like, oh, if I knew then what I know now, if I had all of this knowledge and strength that I didn't have before, I would have just made the decision that was it, and I would have filed for divorce, and I would have never had another conversation again.
Right, which is difficult if you have kids, I would imagine. Like you have to have some sort of like, okay, well, you pick them up at this time, you pick it up at another time. Like, oh man, it's so frustrating, because I really have a lot of empathy for men and women that are in that situation, because it must feel so lonely. Like with women, and I honestly am just theorizing here, but like a lot of women, there are places that women can go to speak to, or groups, etc. But I imagine when it happens to a man, that like to tell someone that your wife is abusing you, there's this whole stigma of masculinity that like if you are vulnerable or weak for half a second, then that means you're less than a man, you're not man enough, and then it becomes this internal shameful self-flagellation that they will probably continue to be abused or in this reality distortion field. And so like no one is safe in these sort of relationships when, like you said, there's no reasoning with them. There's no hoping things would get better. The answer, if someone can finally show you that the reality you're in is actually a complete and utter nightmare, that you just leave. That you just leave and get out and hope that things get better for you as you heal from being around such a poisonous person for so long. Right.
So what I love to share with my clients is I was there. I was one of the worst stories I've ever heard is my own, like some of the stuff that happened. So I was in the thick of it just like they are, and look at my life now. I'm like a poster child for it doesn't have to be so scary. It's that fear of the unknown. If I could get out of with having to prove grounds for divorce, right? Like all of the everything stacked against me, 3 kids under 10, it just a whole lot of, and I was far away from any support. I grew up in New Orleans, so my family's in New Orleans. I live in New York. I have really very little support system around me. Right. If I could, and it wasn't easy, and I did everything wrong, and I didn't have a coach. Nobody knew what the word narcissism was back then.
Right.
So
it was just jerk.
Yeah,
that's
exactly, jerk. Right. And the first day I didn't have my kids because I was 24/7 mom, and the very first day we were separated. I mean, well, the spoiler alert is he did end up choking me. And that was the only way I was able to file for divorce. So it had to escalate to that. before anything could happen. So, but luckily that meant he was out of the house. I had a restraining order. And so the first day he had visitation with the kids, and I didn't have kids for the first time in 10 years. I went to the library. There was no Google. There was no social media. Like it was dark ages. And I was determined, just like people are now Googling, like, why does he do this? Why does he act this way? What is this about? This is so weird. I went to the library and went into the DSM and started reading. I mean, I didn't even know what that was. I'm just discovering all this psychiatry section. And I get to the narcissism section that I never heard of before. And it's like they were in my home. Yep. It was a textbook, everything that he had done. And it was just like, this is a thing.
Yeah. And that must have been a complete weight off of your shoulders, because I think from what I've read and people that, you know, I've experienced this, I've spoken to, myself included, that like you'll always think of a way to think, oh, but maybe I'm doing something wrong here. Like maybe this is something that
you're told that everything's your fault.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. Cause even stuff I've read, like a narcissist or like a psychopath, like this is the smallest thing that was shocking to me. Like they'll, even when you're walking down the street, they'll continually walk into you. And it's just like this little mind game that I couldn't even believe was a thing that is typical of these sorts of personality disordered in individuals. So like, did you feel when you went to the the Encyclopedia Britannica or wherever you went, like did you feel like thank God I'm not crazy, like that this is a real thing?
They had to kick me out of the library. I got there when it opened at 8 a.m. and it was like 6 p.m. on a Saturday. They made me, I hadn't eaten. I could not stop reading all I could consume about this, because it was like, thank God, it's not me. It's not me. This is a disorder. This is a thing. And it's not my fault. It's not that I did everything wrong. It's not that I'm a terrible mother. It's not that I'm a terrible wife. It's not that, all the things that I thought, because I'd been told everything was my fault. Oh, this is the funniest. It got to be a joke at the end that everything was my fault. It didn't matter what. So one day I'm in the kitchen. He's angry. He storms out, whatever. And he backs the car out of our driveway. And I'm watching from the window. And he hit the parked car across the street on his way out of the driveway. And he gets out, and he's coming, and I go, this isn't going to be my fault. He's going to say, I'm inside, I'm not even in the car. I'm just wondering how he's going to make this my fault. He comes again, he goes, that was your fault. I go,
come on.
Really? What? He goes, because remember last night you said blah, blah, blah. Well, I was thinking about that, and it made me so angry that I was distracted. So it was your fault because you said blah, 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 and that really pissed me off. And so I hit a car. Last night I said that, right? And you have to laugh, just like, got it. Okay, my fault.
Right. Yeah, like these relationship dynamics are things that should be honestly taught in school, like red flags, green flags. Like if you don't feel right, like if it's a pattern that is not getting any better, then that's the pattern that your life is going to be with this person. Like I mentioned, like I've known people that have went through rough spells in relationships and marriages, and they have gotten better, right? But like you can notice patterns over time, and I guess one of the biggest benefits I think you're probably giving to your clients is just to tell them that they're not nuts.
They're not nuts. There is a way out. There is hope. There is another life waiting for them should they choose to end this relationship. I hold myself up, I was told, no one will, he said, no one will ever want you. You're 40, whatever years old. You've got 3 children, blah, blah, blah. Nobody's going to, I'm like, okay, I'd rather be alone than be in this marriage. So, how are you going to be a single mother with 3 boys? And it's, they're going to walk all over you. It's going to be terrible. They're all going to do drugs and drop out of school and like all these things. Well,
At least you can have a long list of people in your life you shouldn't take advice from anymore. Like, I think that's probably another benefit. You're like, no, these people said
well,
that
no,
I should
no,
stay
no.
in
I'm
this
talking
marriage
about this
forever.
was my ex-husband's,
Okay.
trying to convince me that I was going to be alone and abused by my sons and like all these horrible things. So guess what? One by one, my adult sons, by the time they were, well, between 14 and 22, each one had their own falling out with him because these people are toxic. You can't have a relationship with them. They don't speak to him anymore. I have ended up remarrying, which I wasn't sure that was something I wanted, but that's what happened. I have a wonderful blended family. All of our children lived with us growing up. They visited their other parent, but we were the primary, and they are this amazing blended family, like Brady Bunch. It's better than I could have ever dreamt. I beyond words, like totally happy, perfect, happy marriage, beautiful family. Everybody's loving, getting along, happy as can be, not involved with their other parents because they can't be. And not because of us. I mean, certainly, if anything, we were trying to encourage relationships, and they chose otherwise.
Right. Well, honestly, good for you. Like I don't even know you at all, and I'm proud of you to hear that story, because it's hard. Like you come out of something like that, and like you feel quite low from all the shame of being in that long, that you didn't get out sooner, that you let someone treat you like that, and all these things, and like it really takes like a mental feat of strength to be like, no, like that's not what my life is going to be moving forward. And then you have to not only think that things are going to be different, you have to start doing things that are different. And then it kind of becomes this pinwheel, virtuous cycle where you're like, I did this thing, I'm different. Okay, you then do something else. And then like eventually you do become different. So you really are the poster child for helping people out
Happy
of these sort of
endings,
scenarios.
right? But all change happens outside of your comfort zone. So as uncomfortable as your marriage might be, it's still your comfort zone. It's what you know. It's your normal. And if you want anything to change, you got to move outside of that comfort zone. And that's the only hard part, is taking that leap.
Especially I imagine for people who maybe went straight from like high school or college, meeting the quote unquote love of their life, and then they're married, and so they really don't know what it's like to be on their own. Maybe they went from their parents' house to married life, and everything else might as well be outer space,
right?
If they're going to get out of that marriage. And tell me, because something else I was reading in preparation for this call, that there are people that are being abused in relationships and having a hard time identifying it, because when a relationship has got to a point that it is so incredibly toxic, you have someone who is, the abuser, but then even the one that's being abused, even to protect themselves, they can become shitty as well, just as in self-defense. And so they end up thinking that they're the narcissist because they're doing things that are like, you're acting in contempt, you're maybe lying about something. So now you're taking on all of these traits as kind of a self-defense in a terrible situation. So that's another reason not to leave, because you're like, oh, maybe I'm the problem here.
Look,
is that accurate?
Almost every person comes to me and is like, I think I might be the narcissist here. It might be me. I'm like, if you're even considering that it might be you, then it's not.
No way. You said almost every client says that?
Yes. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the narcissist because I do these things that are bad. It's like, yes, because you're not on a level playing field, right? Sometimes you have to.
Right.
Sometimes you have to retaliate that way. But if you're self-reflecting like that, you're not the problem.
I'm speechless. It really is amazing that even we're prepared to learn these things in school that don't serve us outside of school in most cases, but we don't have like an emotional maturity course that's taught in high school. Like, just imagine how much better people's lives would be to
Oh my
know that, no,
gosh.
it's okay if you want to be on your own. It's okay to leave a relationship at any age. No one deserves to be treated like this. And there are ways. And I hope that social media, for all of the garbage it gives us, that even now, like, you can't go on Instagram without seeing, like, someone talking about emotional maturity or the different attachment styles or all of these things. So I can only hope that maybe some people will be saved from the sort of clients that you're
Well, I'm with
unfortunately
you. I
helping,
mean, it's a double-edged sword because now it's so mainstream and everybody thinks everybody's a narcissist, and it gets
Right.
thrown around a lot.
If
But
anyone has an opinion now, that they're a narcissist.
yeah, right. So yeah, it's like the pendulum swung too far in the other direction, so we have to wait for it to like even out a little bit.
Right.
But it is great that people are aware, unlike me, unlike how I was, that this is a disorder. And there are a lot of people who have it. And, I meant to tell you when you were saying how, it's many men too. Many women too are narcissists. The numbers increase, the percentages increase in the military and among doctors.
Wow. And why is that? Because there is
The power.
this right. Well, yeah, I guess. Yeah, there is even jokes in the past of doctors having a god complex as well.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Well, I guess wrap this up. I guess what would you say to someone who's listening to this, male or female, that might be in one of these relationships, and how someone like you could help them?
So I think the first step is to really self-reflect about what you deserve or want for your life. Like, what are your standards? What do you want for this one life you have? And that to consider that you're worthy of having a meaningful life, a happy life, a life where you're not abused in any way. So once you set that standard for yourself, you raise that bar saying, this is what I will accept and nothing less. I'm going to demand this level of happiness. Then all the other answers come easily. Like, nope, that doesn't work for me. Like, nope, I'm not accepting that.
Wow. So I guess kind of a foundation of accepting that their feelings matter. Their feelings do matter. That's amazing. Well, thank you. And how can people find you if they want to reach out?
They can go to my website, which is just my name, victoriamccooey.com. They can get a free gift on that website where they'll become part of my mailing list and get a weekly email from me. And in all of those emails there, and also on the website, there is a place to sign up for a strategy session with me. So to work with me in any way, one-on-one or in my group, the first step is to book a strategy session with me, and you can do that on the website.
Great. Well, I'll include that website in the show notes, and for those listening, it would be Victoria, normal spelling, and then McCooey.com.
That's right.
Did I get that? Cool.
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
You did.
Well, thank you very much for your time and
Thank
your wisdom.
you, Mike.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun.
So thanks for listening to No More, No Less. I appreciate the time you spent with me today. So please subscribe and rate the show if you enjoyed it. It'll help me create more amazing content and get that next little bit of validation that I so deeply crave. If you didn't enjoy it, well, that sucks. But to make sure, I think you should listen to my next 10 episodes and then decide. I mean, come on. Rome was not built in a day. I'm just getting warmed up here, guys. So thanks again. See you next time.